What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to take another look at one of the cars that also got the handling update. And what's kind of funny is I don't think I've ever driven this car at all in the entire game. I mean, I don't actually think I've ever used the Bentley Continental Supersports. Funnily enough though, guys, after driving this thing a little bit, I would say this car might actually be pretty dang good. There is going to be a few things about it that I might think might hurt the car just a little bit, but to be honest, I'm just really happy to see some of the other cars getting some love on the game here. So we all know how the Lamborghini Gallardo Super Trofeo, I might have mispronounced that, but regardless, this might be still one of the best cars to use in the touring car class besides like the Renault RS01 as well. So there's still going to be some kings in this class that I do think are still going to remain that way. But to be honest, I'm really happy to see some of these other vehicles actually making a presence in the game now. I think it's pretty awesome that Ubisoft is actually taking the time out to really update some of the older cars. I also feel like this can be insanely good for the longevity of a racing game as well, because that way it's going to give a lot of players different cars to use. I really do feel like seeing like one or two meta vehicles, quote unquote, in a lot of these other events. I feel like it might annoy many players, and to be honest, I've also been in that category a bit as well. I do want to see other cars actually being used, so seeing a car like the Bentley actually make a return into the game with this handling update, I think is honestly pretty awesome. As I did mention before, I don't actually think I've ever driven this car unless I absolutely had to in a summit. And now that I do recall, guys, was there ever a summit you had to drive the Super Sport in? If there was, that was definitely a very long time ago, but I also don't think many people are probably going to be using the Bentley because I haven't really seen this car anywhere, to be honest, like in any races and or leaderboards recently. That might end up changing now with this car getting an update because it definitely does seem to be a bit better. Now, one thing I did also want to do with this vehicle is to take it on a top speed test because I really don't think I ever actually did a test with the Bentley for that matter. So when testing this car out on the highway near Miami, I managed to get this thing to around 255 to around 258 miles an hour with Nitro Chemist. So it's not going to be the fastest touring car in the game, but it's also not going to be the slowest. I have also noticed many of the touring cars in the game, which I might take a deeper look into this, tend to have like around the exact same top speed and or pretty similar to each other, which this could be a way for them to balance out the cars in a different way. Like maybe the cars will have to compete against each other with like different handling and or stability, maybe even like acceleration as well instead of having a crazy top speed. Which one thing I've also noticed on many of the tracks is that crazy high top speed really doesn't matter all that much. It's more of like the insane US Speed Tour races and stuff like that where it's really going to help the car out. Now, a few things I did notice about the Bentley Continental that I did want to talk about. So for the first thing, is most likely going to be kind of obvious in a lot of ways, but that's going to be the handling. So as I did mention before, I really haven't driven this car all that much, but that was literally the first thing I noticed when I jumped into this car. I really do feel like the handling has been updated, and I also really do feel like Ubisoft is onto something here. I mean, many of the cars in the Crew 2, many players might not like them because of like the twitchiness and or the unstable feeling they might have when you're trying to drive them, but I feel like this handling update is definitely bringing them in a right direction. So I really hope other cars will get this treatment, but that is most likely going to be the first thing many players are probably going to notice when they jump into these cars after this handling update. I noticed this like after the first turn I went around with the Bentley, like I noticed the stability and or the way it was gripping instantly, which is always a good thing to see because I really do feel like some of these cars are just kind of forgotten. So seeing something like this with them is going to be pretty awesome, and who knows, maybe we might see more of these cars show up in summits in the future and or actually be used a lot more often. I do know how some of the classes have really good cars in each one, and I feel like a lot of the other vehicles normally fall way behind in many aspects, so most players probably don't revisit some of the worst, I guess, vehicles that are in the game. But luckily getting a handling update like this I really do think is going to help them. Now, one thing I also do have to admit, guys, is yes, the Bentley is going to have better handling. You will definitely notice that if you do jump into this vehicle immediately, but there's also one more issue with this car, and I would say that's probably going to be the speed that it might have. So sure, handling's probably going to make a big difference with many of the races in the game, but we can all definitely agree that overall speed's going to be insanely important. Now, what I mean by that is it's most likely going to be like the acceleration and or the way the car can hold speed. So Obviously, with the car having a lower top speed, for example, like the Infiniti Q60 in the street class, I have found this car to do insanely good around tracks because of the handling. So even if the car might be a little bit slower with a top speed and or the speed of the car overall might be a little bit worse, I still feel like they can still compete in some way, but if the car is definitely struggling, you're most likely not going to see many people using that vehicle, even if the handling might be pretty good. The main reason for that is there's going to be obvious other vehicles you can definitely pick besides that one. For example, like the Superleggera, the RS01, the Koenigsegg CCGT. That's just to name a few there. You can even pick like the Ferrari as well. Some of those cars are going to do really good. They might not be like the best thing when it comes to stability and all that, but I have noticed most of the touring cars tend to be insanely good no matter what when it comes to stability. So that's always a plus, most likely the way the cars are designed as well. But I do feel like that could be one flaw with the Bentley. I have been noticing you will have to go through a lot of nitrous with this vehicle. I was also running a nitrochemist set, and my goodness guys, I was flying through my nitrous so quickly. It was honestly kind of insane, and I was wondering immediately if that's going to affect this car, and I really do feel like it might. Like, let's say you guys wanted to do like a US Speed Tour event with this car, I feel like it might have some issues with it. You might end up even running out of nitrous with the car trying to keep the speed up on it. I also feel like some cars tend to keep their speed up a little bit easier than others, and I feel like the Bentley Supersport might end up having some issues with that. At least that's what I have noticed with it. I wouldn't say it's going to ruin this car in any way, and I might actually try this thing in future summits just to see how it might do. Even though most of the leaderboards are probably going to be the RS01 and or the Lamborghini, I'm still probably going to jump in with this car just to see what it can do. It's also kind of fun experimenting with some of these other vehicles that you really never see in the game, because even though this car might have some flaws with its speed, I still feel like it's still pretty good. And even with the handling being updated on some of these vehicles, I really do feel like more cars are going to come out now and actually be used more often. I really do feel like this is going to help the game a lot though, because at least it's going to give players different cars that they can run and or compete with some of the better ones, because I know not every single player in the game might have some of those better cars and or they might want something they can at least use to farm money and or parts. At least we will have better vehicles that are usable for this now, but I do want to know what you guys think about the Bentley Continental Supersport in the comments below. I feel like this car is definitely better than what it was, but with that one speed flaw, this car might not be used as often. I do want to know what you guys think about this car in the comments below, and stay tuned for the other vehicles of this handling update in the near future.